community that has a very important effort respecting the acknowledgement of the Palestinian state, or focusing the imperative solutions between Israel and Palestine through the establishment of the Palestinian state, focusing efforts and sight to the rights of the Palestinian people of self-determination. Gaza was still in place, Israeli aggression is still to continue, and escalation in the West Bank, in addition to what witnessing of the extension of the war to the Republic of Lebanon. That would make us as Islamic and Arab states, in addition to the ministerial committee, to be before a very standing and difficult mission, which is, firstly, is the ceasefire. And of course, the establishment of the Palestinian state is the main issue, but we should not neglect that hundreds of thousands of the Palestinians suffer daily from hunger, from fear, displacement, let alone the hundreds to be killed daily. And we should not allow for the international community to avoid the Israeli crimes and try to focus in matters that they are not basic and justify the silence, and which is the main role of the ministerial committee and what we are going to do in the upcoming days and weeks. And we hope to be succeeded in this direction. And I think that the gathering of the summit and the issue of the unified Islamic and Arab stance, that a great portion of the people represent, that would be heard and affected in pushing the stances throughout or toward the escalation of reaching a solution. But in fact, there is a reluctance of the international community and the delay of the international institution to make their rules, and that we are going to work upon recently, and to imply the international law effectively.
What difference do you think this summit is actually going to make? Because you had this summit last year, everyone turned up, there was lots of condemnation of Israel's actions in Gaza. 1 year on, the war has spread. So what effect, realistically, is this very grand summit going to have?
Thank you. I think the first effect that this summit, like the previous summit, has is for everyone to hear that the Arab and Muslim world are speaking in one voice, that we are all outraged at what is happening in Palestine, and that the world's dealing with this humanitarian catastrophe and with Israel's continuing violation of humanitarian law, international humanitarian law, the laws of war, will have an impact, because it will register with not just the governments of the Arab and Muslim world, but the people of the Arab and Muslim world. And I think that has had an impact. I think if you see the positions of many countries around the world when the war in Gaza started to where they are now, I think they have evolved. They have evolved significantly in a direction of understanding, first of all, that there is no solution to this conflict that is a military solution, that the only way for sustainable peace in our region is through a two-state solution, is through giving peace and security to all the peoples of our region, including the Palestinians. And I think the conversation has moved significantly in that direction. If we look, for instance, at the Coalition for a Two-State Solution, which was announced in New York in September, which had its first meeting a few weeks ago here in Riyadh, where 90 countries and organizations attended. This is a renewed commitment to a two-state solution that didn't exist before the efforts of the summit and what came out of it. And this is not insignificant because, to be quite honest, the two-state solution was dying a slow death. And with the conflict in Gaza and the activities of Israel in the West Bank, that death was accelerating. But what we now see is that there is a significant consensus of the international community, a majority of countries, of the members of the United Nations, a significant number of the largest countries actually in the world, that stand very firmly behind a two-state solution. And this is a reformation that had been lacking. So I think in that context, that is significant progress. I think there is significant progress given what we saw of several countries recognizing the state of Palestine and others now seriously considering that recognition, including some very, very important countries, and accelerating their recognition even before a final status agreement, which had always been the argument that has held up universal recognition of the state of Palestine. And the reality is, if Israel has a veto over the establishment of a state of Palestine, the risk is that we will never see a state of Palestine. And the conversation has moved and has evolved. Have we been able to stop the conflict in Gaza? Unfortunately, not. And this is a failing of the international community as a whole. It's not just a lack of success of what we have been doing. It is really a reflection of the reality that the mechanisms of international peace and security, front and center of them, the United Nations Security Council, are unable to deal effectively with a conflict where we have had now near 100,000 civilian deaths, the majority of them women and children, and a policy now of starvation being implemented by the Israeli government in clear contravention of every aspect of international law, international human law. So where we have been successful is we have reaffirmed the commitment of the international community to the two-state solution. Where the international community primarily has failed is in actually ending the immediate conflict, in putting an end to Israel's aggression. And that's something that really has to happen immediately. And we have, of course, all of us in the Arab and Islam Muslim world called for an immediate ceasefire. It is up to the international community to realize that when it comes to Israel's prosecution of its war in Gaza and the activities we are seeing in the West Bank, it goes well beyond ensuring Israel's security. This seems to have a much broader agenda. This seems to be working towards changing the status on the ground in a way that is irreversible. So we are going to continue to call on the international community to live up to the standards that they have set, and we will continue to work towards reaching, hopefully, a ceasefire. We will not tire of diplomacy. The Arab world, since 2002, has made clear that their strategic approach is diplomacy, that they believe in peace through diplomacy, security through diplomacy. We are going to continue to work through diplomacy to achieve the peace we all seek and we all deserve.
مساء الخير بدر ربيعان قناة الجزيرة. سؤالي موجه
From Al Jazeera channel, my question to Your Excellency, Mr. Minister, are there any practical steps to support and enable the Palestinian Authority, and are there steps to support them to rule in the Gaza Strip? Is the issue in Gaza and the Gaza Strip, and they are unable to run things there. Supposedly, then they are to define the framework, but they are there is a clear resolution by the summit to support the Palestinian Authority and support and to be protected from the Israeli activities that is clearly targeted to dismantle its ability to run the situation in the Palestinian occupied lands. And hence we affirm again that the international community should shoulder a great responsibility to work on practicing pressure upon Israel specifically to stop such practices, is not least to prevent the tax monies, which are the Palestinian money, to reach the Palestinian Authority, to be spent to the areas that are run by the Palestinian Authority, despite the promises and conventions that Israel entered through. That's what we are going to do late in the upcoming period. Abdurrahman Al-Asimi from Al Arabiya TV channel. My first question to the last Secretary General. The communique welcomed the signature of the League and the IOC and the African Union to supported the effective mechanism in supporting the Palestinian cause. So how it's going to start and when? The second question for Mr. Foreign Minister of Saudi. We are talking about choosing the Lebanese president, mobilize the political situation in Lebanon, and what is the ministerial community and the summit to do in Lebanon as stated in the final communique? Thank you. In fact, currently there is a running African Arab cooperation and Arab-Islamic cooperation to achieve and serve in the Palestinian cause, and a tri-cooperation while the Islamic and African group is gathered the one framework, which is Asia and Africa. Yet, for the first time, an agreement of cooperation to be signed with this regard. Therefore, I imagine that the high officials will convene of the three organizations to address and tackle how to launch the idea and to execute it, whether it's going to be through a half-year meeting or within the context of big events and meeting, and how to coordinate the visions. But generally, the African and Arab cooperation exist, as well as the Arab-Islamic cooperation, and hence, the context is going to be expanded, and it's a matter of time. Allow me to add the most important of the three tertiary cooperation as three organizations that are represent these countries of that number of states are going to talk in a state of to cooperate and coordinate bilaterally. But the three organizations will have only one voice. And let's imagine that the League of Arab States and the member states, some of them are on the African Union and as well as the Islamic Organization of Cooperation. But when the three officials, or the all officials of the three organizations convened, along with the League of the Arab States, to have one voice and to communicate with one voice, this doubtless would have a great impact, particularly in the international arena, such as the NGOs. With regard to Lebanon and the role of the Islamic ruler, of course it is not going to have a role internally, as it's a very internal matter, but certainly they would have a voice and an extension to what's taking place in Gaza. And of course there is a high level coordination between the Islamic and the Arab states upon what's happening in Lebanon, and there is a high level communication, so whether on the level of the leadership of foreign ministers and a continuing coordination to address how to support Lebanon and to get it out of the political vicious. But this would require a positive Lebanese consensus and to project the future in building. The time has come to end for the conference part. If the time is okay to take the last question from الإخبارية News Channel. Peace be upon you. والخالد العوايد from الإخبارية News Channel. Mr. Foreign Minister, last year you have a question about how we talk about the future while Gaza is destructed. And let's remember that the KSA supported to deploy an international community to support the Palestinian Authority while it is able to run the matter in the Gaza Strip. Is it at a time for to implement such a UN resolution? And my last question to the Secretary General of the LAS, what are the hinders of establishing the two-state solution? Thank you. We've already talked about this matter, and allow me that the resolution of the LAS is demanding international protection for the Palestinians. And there is no doubt that the best way to do so in protecting the Palestinian protection and acknowledge their rights and to protect the peace and security, it is a UN resolution to impose a ceasefire. And if there is going to be an international forces, it should be coordinated with the Palestinian Authority. It shouldn't be only in Gaza, but in the West Bank also. As they need protection, as they get or they are exposed of violations from the Israeli settlers as well as the Israeli forces. Thank you, Your Royal Highness. On how to impose the vision of the two-state solution, is that your question? I think so. The two-state solution will come, and it's just a matter of time, because it is not possible to imagine the continuation. Let us, for a moment, to dive in the life and time and say, how would we imagine people of 8 million Palestinian people at least staying in Gaza and in the West Bank, governed, and their lands are occupied by another people of 8 million individuals. How for the world, or to the other side, to imagine that this occupation will move forward for another 100 years to come? How this would it be possible? Especially if we realize that the growth of the Palestinian people, talking about the number, would be increased in a way that would secure that there is a Palestinian majority in the region or in the zone between the river to the Mediterranean Sea. We say, what would for some people to be supposedly that the occupation will continue till 2050 to 2060. Certainly there will be having a great majority of the Palestinian people would for the world talking or speaking about values and principle, democracy and human rights. Would they please to have an appetite as such was in South Africa? For example, this pivotal question should be answered by those who are talking about the values that we are living on. I personally imagine, or I think that it is a matter of time, but to accelerate in achieving the idea and to transfer it to the rest of the international community, some summits like these in the past 11 or the 11 November of the last year, and today there is another summit, and I cannot imagine or to expect that the Arab-Islamic world of a great number of people would allow for the years to pass without the execution of the just solution. We as a whole have listened to the 57 countries' interventions, and there is a resolution of 36 articles that require a very delicate and accurate reading, as it has many of what the world is going to witness with respect to the execution in a gradual and realistic way. For instance, there's an article of this text. I see it as very viable and important, that is talking about to move before the General Assembly to suspend the membership of Israel. This is a step I don't wish to exaggerate. It's the main step to put things upon its right places. If Israel got the right of membership in 1949, if Resolution 181 of the UN General Assembly, but today the two organizations they are moving before the international community, and I think that several countries will adopt and support the idea of the suspension of the membership that is not subject to the vision of the UN General Security Council, that has the sole authority to expel or join in the membership. But no one is talking about the expel or join in, but the talk is focused about the suspension or the freezing, and maybe we witness soon the suspension or to freeze the membership by a resolution of the General Assembly. If you entered of 181, you will be expelled by the resolution 2000 and something. Just to read the 36 articles thoroughly, as there are many to come, and I imagine if this wouldn't be realized, this goal wouldn't be achieved, we will meet once again very soon on the level of another summit to call upon and move on in that path. The Palestinian people will succeed in gaining their right. And thank you for all, and we'll see you once more later on. Thank you.